like audio cues that you use during that meeting.
Yeah.
With your phone or with whatever device.
Yeah, I can do that. Maybe I'll put, I don't know if we've done it like virtually yet.
No, we haven't, but I have experienced it as a virtual phenomenon and it seems to work out all right.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to utilize these.
As long as you're not muted.
Emoji things. Yeah, right. I'll hear the obnoxious noise.
Yeah, and with the visual cues, those can be really hard because some people, especially if you're watching on your phone, you're not seeing everybody's picture, but even if you're on a computer, it, for whatever reason, doesn't always show the full panel.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'll try it.
I'm in a little better shape tonight because I think I can see almost everybody's faces. So I think we can get started.
You're live.
Thank you. All right, we will call our June 13th, well, our June meeting of the 2019-2020 VNA cycle, which maybe has never happened before, to order tonight. I will allow a moment for attendance and for you to get settled over there with minutes.
So I would like to do a new thing just before I do attendance. I've borrowed this from K College. I would like to acknowledge that we gather on the land of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi Indigenous Nations of the Great Lakes region that are also known as the Anishinaabe, or the original people. Their language is, and I'm going to do my best, and as time goes on, I will get better. But when you know better, you do better. So just give me grace in this moment. Anishinaabe. We acknowledge the enduring relationship that exists between the people of the Three Fires and the land. And now I will do attendance. Aaron Bensinger.
Present.
Eddie DeGraw. Present by wave. Brendan Maloney. I heard him. I heard something, but I don't see him.
I do not see him.
See a Brendan.
Okay. Sarah Ruggles.
Yes.
Jared Silner.
Present.
Christina Smith. Margaret Wilson. I am present. Laura Citino.
Present.
Jeremy Turpening. Jeremy, you're muted, but I see you.
Roy and I both want to speak, so should we do one after another? I would register the queue.
Present. I have to ask permission to be unmuted from the host.
I don't know why that is. I just unmuted you.
There's a lot of new security functions of Zoom just because of all the issues that have been happening. So it automatically sets folks to a lot of those things.
Maggie, in response, Kalamazoo is the verbal response to bubbling waters in your new native language, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. I will.
Just so you know the origination of the meaning of the word Kalamazoo.
That's delightful. Thank you for sharing that. Erin Harris, I see you. You are muted.
She's also muted by the host right now.
And Remy Harrington, I do not see her or hear her. And for staff, we have Steve Walsh and Jen Knapp.
Present. Is there a baby seal with us?
Do you want us to mute or unmute? Because it keeps saying host wants you to mute, host wants you to unmute.
I keep trying to just make sure everybody's not muted.
Okay. I'm going to mute because I live by a train track, so it's very loud when the train goes by.
Just wanted to make sure no one was muted, so I apologize if you saw some messages.
No worries.
I'm just going to apologize for the possibility of dog outbursts throughout the evening, even though I'm not really able to mute myself.
Even though you told them we were having a meeting?
You know, older dogs, they just don't really learn. All right, well, sounds like Laura, you're going to be trying to keep time somewhat as best we can in this new format for us this evening. Thank you for that. And thanks now and always to the fabulous Margaret Wilson for taking extraordinary minutes of documenting our goings on. We have consent items. We're all pretty used to what those are at this point, although I apologize that most of those items came to us rather late this time. I'm not even going to go into my excuses for why that is. Let's just say sometimes life gets in the way, and I will try to do better. We have our June agenda, which hopefully everyone has in some form in front of you tonight. It can be tricky when you don't have a printed agenda and maybe you're on your computer, you know, looking at this screen. So I'll do my best to try to remember that and announce each item as we get to it a little more clearly. Remembering that maybe not everybody is able to easily refer back and forth to that. But we have our June agenda. I do actually have a couple of adjustments for that agenda. Welcome, Brendan. The first one is something that Steve sent an email about just recently after a discussion earlier today. I asked that be added to the agenda tonight, just to really cover our bases. So we're putting on here a pre-authorization for what I actually believe will be 2 mural projects. As far as the dollar amounts for those, there was one small thing about Steve's email that I want to just add a little clarification to, because this was something that came up even in our discussion this morning, that we really need to kind of return to our financial procedures and get those revised, because the actual document itself doesn't reflect the amendment yet that was added within the last couple of years, that the threshold for project approval for at the staff level is actually 2,000. Used to be whatever, I think it was maybe 1,500 or something that you mentioned in there. That threshold is 2,000. 2 of these 3 projects exceed that level by a penny or more. And so 2 of them are requiring a pre-auth. 1 of them is being half funded by a CADI grant and half funded by our organization. And so that one actually falls below that $2,000 threshold. So I think it wouldn't be a bad idea, however, to just discuss the 3 projects comprehensively, just to kind of fill everybody in on all the goings on. And so with that kind of lengthy explanation, we're going to add to our agenda item 3. I'm having a little reluctance on where to add this in, because it is actually tied to some of our other discussion points in our new business. The RFP task force, you know, results of that conversation and the ongoing process with that is pretty directly related to discussing these 3 projects. So I'm thinking I wanted to maybe take suggestions from where people think that might best fit into our new business tonight.
I think we should just stick it right after the RFP discussion. Make it C and bump the last part down.
So bump item C down to D, and then add in a new item 3C, which is the mural projects. Any other suggestions or amendments to that? Aaron? Aaron's muted and having some trouble. Just going to pause for that to maybe we can see quite a few people muted.
Okay. Jared, I'm sorry, a point of order on the locked microphone situation. Jared, have you been able to figure out a way to stop requiring people to get your permission to unmute?
I am looking at that right now.
Okay. Okay, good. I offered in the chat, if you don't need to retain the hostship in order to broadcast, I'm happy to have that transferred to me and for me to figure it out. I'm pretty familiar with the program. I just haven't had to do that particular thing before. So, yes, that was what I had to add.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks everybody for your patience too. We're gonna, keep having these, obviously every meeting so far, we've had one variety of technical stuff or another. So hopefully we will encounter all the problems that can possibly happen before we attempt this with our annual meeting. So maybe it's all for the best. Okay, I think the suggestion was to add in our discussion of those mural projects as item 3C, which would mean that the previous item 3C becomes 3D. The other thing I wanted to add in here, let's see. Oh gosh. No, sorry, that was the only adjustment. Anybody else have anything to add or adjust for the agenda? Erin?
Is this the time to call for an amendment to prior meeting minutes?
Oh,
Yes.
I was going one by one, but any of those consent items that need adjustment or amendment, yeah, now would be a fine time to.
Cool. This is super minor, but yeah. I would like the public record to show, I noticed it when I was looking at the May Board of Directors meeting minutes. It says that I am excited to see my niece. I don't have a niece.
Oh my God. I don't know who.
Why don't you like
I want somebody who's like looking through public records in 100 years and doing genealogy
right.
work or whatever to get confused. I don't have a niece.
Who had a niece? Someone.
Jared had
a
niece. Jared was excited to see his niece.
Was it you, Aaron Harris?
No, I don't have a niece. Sorry.
It was Jared.
It's not me.
I have a niece, but I don't think I mentioned her in the meeting.
Jared, do you have the new niece?
No.
It was
It was Jared.
my niece.
Oh,
Jared.
all right.
Brand new baby, I believe, right?
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for reading that.
I wish I had a niece.
I appreciate it.
I can recall that conversation, and I think Erin Bensinger said she was excited to have knees, like to have two functioning
Oh.
knees. Yeah.
Okay.
You got them.
So that's all right. With that,
which is right.
we will adjust our minutes to reflect that and our agenda for tonight with items 3C and D. Any other adjustments? We did come out with the year-end financial statements. A note to the board, I am going to ask that starting with our June report that will be coming out in July, that Tony actually just begins to direct all of those reports directly to all of the board members. And so you will all get those financial reports pretty much as soon as they're hot off the press and have a little more time to review those so that you're not getting quite so much bulk to have to look over, within that last week or days before the meeting. With those things mentioned, would anyone like to motion to approve those consent items?
Make sure you're unmuted.
Oh yeah, we have quite a few people muted.
I will motion to approve consent items as modified.
Thank you, Jared.
Second.
And who seconded?
Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy. And all in favor? You know what? I know this is tedious, but when we do these votes, I think it's worth just doing a roll call every time. Otherwise, it's really, I don't know how Maggie could possibly have kept track of what was just voted there.
We have a couple people who are.
But okay.
Sorry. Yes. Aaron Bensinger.
I think she says aye, but is muted.
Eddie
And-
DeGraw.
Thank you.
Got it.
That's a
Brendan
thumbs
Maloney.
up.
Aye.
Sarah Ruggles.
Yes.
Jared Selner. You are both muted and not visible, so you will have to do something. Oh, you motioned. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to say this. You said yes. Because you.
Yeah, I motioned. It doesn't matter.
Christina Smith is not here. I'm looking at my old one so I can not have to scroll up and down.
And
I will say yes.
With us tonight.
Jeremy Trubinger second. He doesn't have to. Gwendolyn Hooker, do you approve to accept the
Yeah.
motion for the minutes? Good. Aaron Harris?
Yes, I do.
All right. And that's everybody who's here.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Our first agenda business item, we are at section 3A. We're returning as per our last meeting to really try to come up with our plan for going ahead with this year's meeting and elections. And mainly, I think some time has elapsed and we've maybe had the opportunity to really see where we can expect to be at a little bit more clearly over the coming month or two, and do a little bit better best guess at what the best strategy is going to be for this. I think we had already kind of come to the conclusion that a remote meeting seemed to be the best option for us. But I'm sorry, was there a comment there? Okay. And so the first consideration being for this, that if we are looking at a Zoom format for the meeting, which I would say really, I've been able to participate in a handful of the larger group Zoom, meetings, which several of which involved quite a bit of participation from pretty much all the attendees. And it definitely seems like something that we should be able to administer relatively easily. It's obviously going to be pretty different from what our meeting agenda is usually like when we gather at O'Duffy's. And sadly, we're not really going to be able to perpetuate that tradition of gathering in that space, which I think we've done for quite a lot of years now. Hopefully we can set up something to happen there as soon as circumstances allow. The idea of a Zoom annual meeting, I think we realized in our executive meeting last week that that would really necessitate someone being able to come forward as a meeting admin for that process and be able to take on the responsibilities of administering the technical side of that, and probably in all likelihood would be a good idea to have a backup person for that person as well, having seen kind of that has been the case in a lot of instances of that I've seen when you have maybe more than 50 attendees or so. Can be a little unwieldy, unexpected things can happen. So tonight on our agenda, we have quite a few items that are really going to be kind of soliciting for people to step forward and commit to a couple of responsibilities for some events that we have coming up and for some work that we have to take on. So this is our first opportunity for whoever might be interested in that responsibility or be willing to take on that responsibility to come forward and put yourself out there, because without that, we will not be able to
I did some very cursory research after last meeting into an online ballot situation, and I found a couple pretty promising options. But I didn't dig much deeper than spent a couple hours on it and then sort of let it go by the wayside. So my mistake on that. But there are some pretty solid online polling options that would allow us a lot of flexibility and a lot of security without, in my opinion, shortchanging members' ability to actually vote.
Mm-hmm.
So, I could put together a couple options. I don't know if somebody wanted to ad hoc a committee with me and also help in researching that and maybe weigh some best options.
Well, so I guess here's a thing to consider that maybe we haven't really weighed in the balance before, but we basically have two options with the digital format, which would be if we were to do that, you really, even if you're looking at online ballots as one of several options, maybe we have mail-in ballots or ballots that people can turn in person, but we have an online ballot as well, which we haven't had before. Either way, really, in order to collect those ballots and review them comprehensively, we're really kind of looking at a de facto fully absentee ballot type of voting for the election. And there are two ways that could play out, which would be that during the meeting itself, and this is probably, I don't know, this is probably the more common one, which would be candidates are able to present themselves, and then polling happens afterwards in those various formats, and or bios are submitted and those are available to the public as well. And then our traditional format of having our meeting and our appointing of officers, et cetera, directly after that is kind of out the window in that scenario. Really, that would mean that we would need time to calculate the tally. We would have had to go with what I guess would be the other option, which would be to collect all the ballots prior to the scheduled meeting date and have those results tabulated by that time in order to really reasonably meet and kind of do things as we historically have. Go ahead, Jared. You're muted still.
Sorry. In the past, and I'm not sure, basically in the past, the way that it's worked out is that all ballots were tallied while there was another speaker or another set of presentations going on. And then following that presentation of final numbers was the officers meeting or the directors meeting. I don't see how that would be different to have an option to vote prior to the meeting itself, as well as during the meeting, and just have, a deadline set. Not only that, but it would actually be faster to tally if the majority of ballots are digitally.
I guess, yeah, the only quirk about that, or one of the quirks about that, is that anyone who's not voting during the meeting in that digital format, like with a online ballot, would not really have the opportunity to review the candidates prior to casting their vote.
I believe I think that's correct. That would be correct regardless of whether this is a regular old format, and in my opinion, allowing absentee voting prior to the meeting only serves to extend people's access to the process.
So given those considerations, I think we can safely say that at the very least, among the discussions we've had with the executive committee, we're all feeling considerably more comfortable moving forward. I know that in talking with Steve about this, there's definitely like a greater sense that this is doable. This is not quite as uncharted as it felt maybe a month or especially 2 months ago, and that we're kind of ready to be at the point where we can set a date and then do what we need to do to adhere to that schedule. And so I think that is the main decision before us tonight. Once that date is determined, then those considerations that we just discussed, I think, can be worked out by those who wish to participate as volunteers in that process, which is another thing that I would really like to talk to everybody about with the scheduling of this meeting, is to take on a few extra folks for volunteer duties, because, you know, usually we have people who can volunteer, and quite a lot of the board members generally participate as volunteers during our annual meeting night of, and this time actually a lot more of the volunteer work is going to be needed ahead of time. So we can maybe defer the detailed conversations about how all of those balloting processes are going to play out to that group of volunteers who are going to be taking on the responsibilities of the meeting. But I wanted to put that to the board tonight to decide on our scheduled time. I think that there's a pretty open, what I take away from discussing it with the executive committee is a pretty open recommendation that we are able to go ahead with the meeting, and that it's just a matter of setting a determined date at this point. Especially for the sake of being able to solicit for nominees. That's a big part of the process. It's hard to ask people if they want to serve on a board and not be able to tell them when they're going to start doing that. So this decision, you know, will allow us to kind of step forward into the next phase and start publicizing, soliciting for nominations, and moving forward with the process on a timeline. So I welcome suggestions, motions at this point, further discussion if anybody has anything else to add. We've discussed it quite a lot.
As I mentioned before, I would like to volunteer to figure out how we're going to poll and facilitate.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Gwendolyn. I just had a question. I know that there are time sensitive things that have to happen. I guess, and this could just be me and my Blackness, but there's so many other things that are happening right now in Kalamazoo that I just wonder if this is not, it's important, but I wonder if there's a better use of our time on something that we could be doing, as opposed to trying to figure out how to conduct a annual meeting, which I know of at least 6 other nonprofits that, I mean, all nonprofits have annual meetings. None of the ones that I know are having an annual meeting this year. It's a wash. It is, nonprofits are scattering around trying to deliver the services that support their mission. And that is my organization's priority. That is most organizations' priority. And to spend time trying to schedule meetings and figure out how that's going to happen when there's lots of other things that my neighborhood association could be doing than trying. I mean, even spending time in a board meeting right now, talking about this is to me like very trivial when there is so many other things that are going on that would be a lot better use of time. That's just my opinion. I just think that this is a discussion for me. I would suggest to be tabled until a later date. The whole thing. That's just my suggestion.
If I could ask just for one, if you could maybe give a little bit more of your thoughts on as you were explaining all that, and I definitely see a lot of validity in all those points you just made, and I just want to make sure that we can all understand that what we're talking about, and you referred to the meeting a lot, and I would tend to agree. The meeting.
Wait, pause. That was 15 minutes.
Thank you.
I agree with Gwendolyn, and I will take her suggestion and turn it into a motion that we table this until August meeting.
I'll
second that. Yeah.
Discussion on the motion. We do have a legal obligation to announce a meeting, I believe. But I also would state that if there is a strong enough precedent among our peer organizations, which I'm positive that there is, we can discuss. This might be a question, honestly, for Leo, Steve, because we do have a legal obligation based on our charter and based on our commitment to the city. But also, if there's a strong enough precedent and we feel strong enough to just nix it, I would support that. But there is a potential legal ramification there.
Who is going to hold us accountable to that, and in what way? Like, what repercussion are you fearing there?
None at all.
I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with that.
None at all. That was my question. I just wanted to bring attention to it.
Okay.
So we also in tandem have a responsibility to support and deliver our mission, and that supersedes a meeting. We're not talking about not having a meeting. We're talking about tabling it until we have figured out some really basic types of day-to-day operation. Like, we're not even open. So we haven't delivered services out of my neighborhood association for at least 3 months. So any type of services that our neighborhood needs, they're not getting them. So that's a problem. That is in direct conflict with our mission. And so I think our mission really supersedes meetings. And I mean, it has been known to happen that people hold their seats until an election takes place. That's not unheard of. But to continue to, use time to talk about an annual meeting that there really, quite frankly, there is no precedence really to conduct an annual meeting. Like, people aren't talking about doing that. I sit on a lot of boards and I go to a lot of things, and that's just not the discussions. People are trying to deliver the services that their mission employs. It's about delivering services to people. And that's an equitable item that has to be done as a nonprofit. That's our tenement. That's what we do. And so, and again, to Erin's point, who's the person that would be the person that would hold us accountable for not doing that? Because there would be a lot of people that would have to be being held accountable for that. This is not something that, we are in unprecedented territory right now. There's lots of things that are happening that have never been happening in my lifetime. So we're gonna have to create a path and go with that path. And my ideal is that it's more important to deliver services to communities and neighborhoods than to spend time talking about trying to have a meeting that is going to be very, very complicated and inequitable on its face. I mean, there's no way that we can really equitably do that.
Again, I wholeheartedly agree. I just wanted to bring up the point that we do have a legal obligation.
And I agree with that as well. I'm not as familiar with the precedents for holding a seat. And I think the comment I was trying to get at a little bit ago was more just a clarification on talking about the meeting side of things, talking about the election side of things. And if we do defer the meeting or cancel the meeting altogether, regardless of that, the consideration of the election and the appointments and also the officerships and the leadership of our organization is one of the things at stake every year when we do that. And one last thing to add to the as a consideration, and not that I disagree with the idea or the motion or anything, but just as a consideration for us all to think about down the road, if we are postponing again, that we're looking at, I think, as we've discussed it in the planning phases of it, so far, we're looking at probably wanting to have at least a 2-month lead time on when the meeting is scheduled, from the point that the meeting is officially scheduled to the point when it would take place. And if we're not scheduling the meeting in June, if we, each point to which we defer that decision puts the actual meeting itself out by probably another month or minimum month, but probably more like 2 months beyond that. And maybe that is the best path forward. But just to make sure that we're clear about what that's going to look like is, putting it out to August means that the soonest the meeting likely is going to take place, soonest the election, I guess, is really what I think, to me, the bigger concern is going to take place would be October.
So I think that continuing to belabor the point of when the meeting is going to occur kind of misses the point of what Gwendolyn brought up in the first place. Gwendolyn, not to put words in your mouth, and please correct me if that is not what you intended, but I really think, Gwendolyn really brought it to my attention in very clear focus when she said that the fact that we're even having a meeting right now is kind of wild, because that made me realize that I have not been paying attention because I'm organizing right now. Like, I am sending emails, I am gathering people up, like working on scripts, like while I'm also trying to pay attention to this meeting. And I think that to continue to talk about, so obviously it's important to us as the VNA to hold elections, right? But that, I think that many people would be open to forgiving the fact that some folks on the EC held their position for an additional year because we had a pandemic and the largest civil rights movement in this century in the past 4 decades, So with that, I would like to request that we close discussion on Maggie's motion and vote on it. To table this entire discussion about what we're going to do until August.
Thank you. All right. Was there a second for that motion?
It was seconded by Gwendolyn when Maggie initially proposed it, yeah.
Okay. And Maggie, could you repeat your motion prior to taking a roll call vote?
A motion that we table discussing the annual meeting until August meeting. And we can call it the August Board of Directors meeting. And I'm open to anyone who wants to make any amendments to that or changes to that, or wants to suggest that we just stretch the time.
Eddie has a hand up.
Okay, I can unmute myself. Is it possible for folks to just look into other neighborhood associations and ask what they're doing?
I think Steve is pretty aware, but he stepped away for a second, of what the other neighborhood associations have been up to.
Because that's the most similar nonprofit to us, and if we can just get some feedback from the rest of the Kalamazoo community and see what their processes are, we might be able to make a more educated guess as to like what we should do to move forward.
For sure. Thanks, Eddie. I can follow up on that. I have I talked to both Pat Taylor at the East Side today and Tammy Taylor at in Edison, and just asking about when they were going to open and kind of questions about how their hours of operation. Neither of them are open right now. Edison is not planning on opening until sometime in July. East Side is going to go by appointment only. I will follow up directly with what they were doing on annual meetings. It was a discussion that we had in mid-March, but it's fallen by the wayside with history. So
that would be my only suggestion for research before our next meeting, to have some more information, just so we have a more informed conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do support having an August discussion about it with a little more information of what other groups are doing.
And again, not to belabor the point, I do know that the PFC is going ahead with their meeting. I want to put out there that it was in my minutes, or in my executive director report, but Leo Gadeen, our legal counsel from Miller Canfield, has been furloughed until December. So I'm not really sure exactly what that means. I'm able to access, he's not able to work out of Miller Canfield. I'm not sure if we'll need to start to look for other legal representation at some point, but just wanted to put that out there, that Leo is not as accessible as he traditionally has been at this time.
Thank you. All right. Eddie, would you like to go ahead with our roll call?
Aaron Bensinger.
Aye.
Eddie DeGraw.
Aye.
Brendan Maloney.
Oh, did you get that?
I did not get it. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Brendan. Eric Ruggles.
I'll abstain.
Jared Selner.
Support.
I support. I made the motion. I don't need to say that, do I? Jeremy Turpening.
I'm going for the vowel after E.
And Gwendolyn second, so I'm going to assume she's in support. Aaron Harris.
Aye.
You don't have the votes.
Is that a wrap?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Wait, hey Maggie, am I not being called for the eyes?
Oh my gosh, Laura.
I don't think I was last time either.
Sorry. I'm
sorry, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. You know why I'm missing you is because I'm working from last month, so I don't have to scroll up.
I almost called that
and
out.
You weren't here last month, so you're on my absent part. So when I'm reading along and like that person's not here, and I apologize. I'll do better next time. That's on me.
Thanks.
Laura,
Aye.
I'd like to vote aye.
I thoroughly support what's happening.
Oh.
Meeting.
All right. I think with that, we can go ahead and move forward to 3B, which is a recap, maybe to start from Steve on where we're at with our RFP task force. Aaron, if you have some stuff to add into that as well for context and updates, I guess either of you that want to go first are welcome to open that up.
Sure. Aaron, do you mind if I start?
Go for it.
Okay. So I spent a lot of time reaching out to other organizations, reached out to Matt Leckel at one place, talked to Dave Feaster at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. And one of the things that I realized is that there wasn't going to be some sort of magic RFP that fit all of our needs. And that in many ways, we're kind of drafting a document that I haven't really have yet to see. I've looked at, San Antonio Arts Council and Savannah's public arts displays, but there isn't anything that would exactly fit what we're looking for right now. So I reached out to Dorla Bonner, who works for the city of Kalamazoo and is the, I think she's the director of diversity. I apologize, I will not get her full title. She is responsible for making sure that the RFPs that the city of Kalamazoo puts out are equitable. She and I were to meet today at 3. It seems like something happened that she wanted to meet at 5:10, and that we were never able to pull it off. But I know Dorla very well, and I feel like Dorla is probably the strongest lead I've gotten since I started this, and I feel more comfortable that with her insight and guidance, I'll be able to draft something that we will be able to hopefully be able to we'd be able to wordsmith and really dig into, is my hope, because I haven't seen anything out there that replicates the type of language that I'm looking for, and I'm not entirely sure that I'm looking for the same language that everyone else is looking for. But so that's kind of where we're at right now. I feel comfortable that Doral and I are going to get together on this, and hopefully we'll produce something quickly.
And if I could add just one quick word to that, Steve and I, when we spoke about it this morning, I think both agreed that I obviously offered to help sort of participate in that drafting process, but really that there would be a lot of value in opening some part of that process up to board members who also wanted to participate with that drafting process, with the revision process, and kind of like helping to come up with something that is really comprehensively, soundly aligned with our mission and what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you.
And Steve, did you have anything else to add? Or maybe Aaron, did you want to add a few comments?
Not really. I was disappointed that I didn't get to touch base with Darla this afternoon, but I had just reached out to her yesterday, and I know that her particular office is very busy at this time.
Cool. So I will add, I'm going to lead with an apology. We left that I thought it was a really good, really solid, informative session, an actionable session with the directive that Jeremy and Jen would lead a task force to sort of begin the process of seeking out or developing a new RFP process, and that both Aaron and Aaron on Team Aaron would lead a task force to search for an equity consultant to help us, get our stuff together as an organization. That meeting happened the week before George Floyd's death, and a lot changed, and my attention was completely directed elsewhere, and I did not get around to it. So I will, and I do think that seeking out an equity consultant right now is not only very important, but also probably going to be a bit of a challenge, given that a lot of white organizations have had some realizations over the past month. But I am still interested in staying committed to work on that, if Aaron Harris also is. And I will, again, attempt to hold myself accountable. And Aaron hopefully will hold me accountable also. And I will hold her accountable to have something to show for that, or to have begun that process by our next board meeting. So.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think we're just navigating waters right now that I'm trying to take in as much as I can and listen and learn, and trying to seek out people with really that in top of mind. Our task that, we agreed to do. So, and I really think everyone's so preoccupied right now that, but also eager at the same time.
I have to personally apologize for taking the RFP process on and having to drop that. Not an apology as much as a forgiveness from the board. I had a grandmother pass away, and I don't want to leave this on Jen's shoulders, and I'm sure I will pick it back up eventually. But if anybody needs their grandmother cremated, I know the people now. And if you're looking for such services, I'm your guy.
So, Jeremy, I am so sorry, and I am also grateful for your delightful sense of humor.
Well, that's what it's. I'm pretty sure that's why she picked me. So there we go.
Aaron,
I echo that.
You're not nominating your niece for that cremating, Aaron.
I want to say just a quick note on this. I think that part of what I took away from that meeting was that this is not just about the RFP process. It's about looking at the Vine Neighborhood Association as an organization that exists within a superstructure of white supremacy, and that we're trying to reach a higher calling of working to be better about that. And so in this space, I think we can offer all of you people who volunteered to take up some of that work a lot of grace, because I know that on the ground, you guys are doing that work in other places, and that's important, and it's all important, and that this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon, and we're not going to get there tomorrow.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, and Jeremy, so sorry for your losing your grandma. That's a hard thing to go through on top of everything else. And Jeremy was really great and kind of reached out to me right away to let me know that he wasn't going to be able to do that with a lot of other responsibilities, totally understandably right now. And I think that Steve has been really great in kind of stepping in to fill that gap. And obviously, you know, it makes a lot of sense to move forward in that structure right now. I'm trying to, as much as I can, to offer to fill in that role as well. So did anyone have any questions or further discussion about where we're at with that process? Because we're probably going to really get into maybe, you know, some more of that with some of our other agenda items, but.
I just want to note that a lot of the folks that had issue with it aren't on the call tonight, and I just want to make sure that we touch base with them or have a way to say, hey, we're still working on this, where you haven't, you know, it's not at the forefront, but just the apologies that I heard right now, I think would be good if we could send out in an email or something. Remy's not on the call right now, and
I am on the call.
Oh, hi, Remy.
Oh, Remy.
Hi, I just got on. Hello, guys.
I still think Brianne's not on. I just feel like Christina's not on. There's a lot of members that aren't on right now at the board, and just if we could keep it an active conversation, even if we do, you know, apologize for whatever missteps we take along the way or the graces we give each other, but I don't know. I just want us to still be held accountable and keep the work going. I didn't realize how much of a hand talker I was until I'm doing these calls constantly. Hi, Remy. Sorry.
Thank you. Welcome, Remy.
Hey.
You are just a phone number.
Good. Hi, Remy.
Yeah. Hello, you guys.
Remy, you're coming into, we are actually discussing agenda item 3B, the RFP task force, and kind of got some recaps on that. We actually have an additional agenda item that was added in between B and C, which is the mural projects that Steve emailed all of us about today. And that we are about to get into that.
I haven't had an opportunity to look at that, but as you guys all know, this has been a really interesting and volatile landscape since we last met, and even as it relates to some of the public artworks that have happened downtown and the impetus for that work, it further substantiates my position about what we talked about. So I'm curious to read through the notes that Erin sent, and just grateful to again be on the call, and sorry I'm late, doing everything as usual. So I'm here to contribute. So that's that. Okay. Love y'all. Hold on.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you're here with us right now. I also want to, you know, reiterate my apology for getting the board packet out pretty late this time. Honestly, my car might be dead right now and I had to take it to the shop this morning, but excuses. Sounds like we are all kind of like on that thread at the moment. And Erin got us those minutes for the RFP meeting that we held. Definitely encourage everybody after the meeting, take some time to look through that stuff. I think it's pretty thought-provoking stuff, along with if you haven't had the opportunity to really like go thoroughly through what Steve sent earlier, a pretty elaborate email about these projects, but we'll discuss that now. And I think that brings us to our added agenda item 3C. And I think if I can kind of give a bit of context for these projects before maybe letting Steve explain the projects. Maybe Jen, you can add to the contextualization as well. And we have been obviously undergoing a process of building refurbishment and adding public art to our building for a couple of years now. There have been ongoing conversations with quite a lot of people around the neighborhood. Happily, all pretty local artists, most of them from the Vine neighborhood. And right now we are in the middle of, basically we're in the middle of the season. Projects are needing to get underway. And we have 3 mural projects from Maya James, Alexander Ladd, and Patrick Hirschberger that are pending right now. 2 of the projects, I got the written quotes along with the rest of you today, but had suspected that they would exceed the staff project approval limit of 2,000. And we were not able to review those projects at the executive committee meeting last week, but it might be for the best that we just bring all of this forward to the board, since this has been a pretty robust discussion among all of us in the past. And I think it'll just be really good to give everybody the full picture of what's going on and what we have coming up, and inform our discussion process of creating a better path forward for how to pursue these kind of projects. So, with that, and again, I'll reiterate what I mentioned way earlier, which was that in Steve's email, I'm not sure how many had a chance to review the explanation in there, and maybe you can kind of just have a recap of that anyway. But we did have an amendment that does not actually reflect in our financial procedures document, which maybe was what Steve was referring to when going according to that approval threshold. I'm not sure where the feedback is coming from, but there's definitely a lot of background noise coming in somewhere. I'm not sure. Is everybody hearing that?
Yes.
Are you able to hear me?
No, it's gone. Yep.
Okay.
I muted.
So with that, that basically puts us in a place where Maya James and Alexander Ladd's mural projects are 2,000 and just over 2,000 bids respectively. And Patrick's is actually under that mark by a little bit. So that one is really a matter of staff approval as far as the financial threshold goes. But I was talking to Steve this morning, and kind of, I think we agreed that regardless of those kind of financial procedures, this is something that, just for the sake of transparency, we want to just give everybody kind of a comprehensive picture of all of our projects and be able to understand kind of the bigger vision for the building, and also be open to guidance and suggestions from board members for next steps. And Steve, I will turn it over to you for kind of, if you wouldn't mind, maybe in the case that people weren't able to review all the material you sent, just to give a quick recap of that.
Sure.
And for those who didn't have a chance to review, there are some visual mock-ups in that email that Steve sent that will show you the actual proposals for the projects that we're talking about.
Thank you, Sarah. First off, I want to start off with an apology. This feels like it's a sensitivity that I keep tweaking and bringing up, and I'm sorry for sort of a lack of awareness as we move through this now, and I want to take this opportunity to put this all out in front and kind of press the reset button in terms of how I do things out of here. I wrote in the brief write-up that traditionally well, we haven't had much of an RFP process because traditionally we haven't really been in a position to fund projects. And traditionally what has happened is that folks would come to me with an idea for any of the murals that are on the building here. Folks had come to me and we went and tried to find the funds to make these murals and make these projects happen. So we've had discussions with Patrick. He's had opportunities here before. Alexander Ladd and Maya both were featured artists last year at the Intrepid Professional Women's Development Network Art Hop in July. And we had started discussions about potential murals, one on the building here, which would be composed by Maya James, and one at the Davis Street Park done by Alexander Ladd. Alexander and I had worked together to come up with a budget, and I submitted a grant request to the Rotary Club of Kalamazoo. Unfortunately, the request was not funded. I don't know if the Rotary issued any grants this year or not, but that sort of put us on our heels in terms of now we had to scramble to find the funding that we had presumed would be there with the Rotary grant. Alexander's original grant, his original proposal came in very low, about $700 or $800, I think. I can't recall exactly what it was. And that was born of he and I trying to do things with a very limited budget and trying to figure out how could we do this cheap, absolutely cheap. After the Rotary grant fell through, I talked to both Sarah Ruggles and to Jen, and we talked a little bit about some of the buckets of funding that we had, and we do have funds for the early win, the early win grant that the city of Kalamazoo put out. We have about $2,200 in there, and we felt that this would be a good opportunity to help. That would be a great stream to fund Alexander's project. Alexander has met with a few other people in the community that were able to sort of reshape and remodel that proposal to be more accurate and fair. I want to make sure that he is fairly compensated. The new proposal came in right at $2,000, and that's why that is here for board approval tonight. Maya James and I have been working on this mural. We've been talking about a mural for a long time as well, over a year. And she and I too had talked about how we would do this. I don't know that any of the murals up here, with the exception of the ones that went up last year, were ever, I don't know that we spent more than $500 on them. That was sort of the ceiling for when I was here before. So that was what Maya and I were working with, and it was hard to get off the ground. It was definitely not going to be an equitable payday for her, respectful of the labor that she put in. So in this broader conversation as well with Jen and Sarah, when we received the facade improvement grant from the Local Improvement Strategic Corps for $25,000, Jen was generous enough that we were able to move things around in different categories and offer Maya $2,000 as well. Her proposal came in right about there, actually came out at exactly $2,000. This is a flawed process on my end. That $2,000 is not arbitrary, but was kind of driven by what we were going to contribute to Patrick Hirschberger's mural. We felt that across the board, the offers should be relatively similar in size, and that was a number that we were comfortable working with and that the artists were comfortable working with as well. Moving forward, this, as I said, this has been a flawed process, and it's revealed blind spots that I've had and that have been historically kind of smooth, not necessarily smoothed over, but just as part of the process of how things go here at the VNA. So, I think there's at least I can speak for myself that there's an understanding and a desire to do things much differently and to incorporate a new way of looking at these opportunities as they come up. And tip my hat to Remy for bringing it to my attention, and to Aaron for facilitating the good RFP process that hopefully will help us develop the language and the kind of the approach that we want to take moving forward. These two grants, or these two other asks tonight, we could have funded at below the board ask, but I believe that it was important to try to make sure that the artists were compensated as closely as to being equal as we could at the time. Again, I want to apologize. These were projects. I think most folks know that, most folks on the board even that have worked in this office or worked with me, these are conversations that we have a long way out. And I by no means want to make it seem like I'm just trying to run these through or sneak these through at the last minute. these are conversations that began early last year and maybe even prior to that to some extent. And you know, I apologize for not getting them ahead of the board right prior to this, but it's important that we have full disclosure at this time and that there's transparency in what we do forward. And again, I think it's important that I apologize for missteps. I feel like there's been a lot of grace in the past for me to make mistakes, but I don't want to keep taking advantage of that generosity.
I would like to add an apology as well that I really, and thank you, Steve. I really feel like it would have been much better due diligence for the executive committee to have reviewed all of this in our agenda last week and already kind of had a discussion about this prior to tonight's meeting. This kind of came up pretty last minute, even though it's not something that was known about at the last minute. It's something that's been known about for a long time, and including by myself. So I take some responsibility for really not bringing this to light in a timely way, and pushing to get this into an earlier agenda for a pre-authorization. Didn't quite realize that these projects were going to be like coming into fruition quite as quickly as they did, but still I've known about it for quite a while and definitely could have in a better version of things definitely brought this up much sooner. So before us we have our two projects from Maya James and Alexander Ladd. Both are bids that are for an ask of $2,000 from our organization for all work completed for those murals, labor and materials together. And those were sent by email today. It's understandable if everybody didn't have the chance to thoroughly review those. And it would be understandable if there was any reluctance to be hasty at this point about an authorization for these projects. At the same time, both are really amazing artists who are both from our neighborhood and deeply connected to Vine. Maya is also an amazing activist. I was thrilled to be able to participate in the protest march that she led on the Saturday during the series of protests that happened last week, and brought 4,000 or 5,000 people together in this town. And I think I would be extraordinarily proud to be a part of having her art displayed. And with that, I would encourage a little bit of discussion from the board prior to any type of motion. Go ahead, Aaron.
I would like to make a motion before.
Sorry, Jeremy.
I make a motion that we accept both offers and get this thing done. I come from an organization.
I'm just gonna pause that motion. We're in discussion right now, so we're gonna take just a few minutes. And Aaron Harris had at least a comment or discussion item. So we'll table that motion until following discussion.
I just wanted to know if we could get a bit of a description of the art that they'll be displaying and how it kind of ties into the current, like just a little bit more of a visual. I mean, I've seen Maya's work, and I think I actually saw maybe a sketch or something of what she was planning to do. So specifically, can we have maybe a description of this art? And I don't know.
There are descriptions and pictures in the email that I sent out this afternoon.
Okay.
Hirschberger's is going to be very similar to the mural that he did on the side of Howard's building, I think it is, on Portage, where there'll be Vine bubble letters and then pictures of iconic Vine landscapes inside. Alexander has kind of really, He has more like a kind of a science
graffiti.
I'm sorry?
This is more like graffiti art?
I wouldn't say that. I would, it's just more of a, they're very vibrant, bright colors. And I guess I wouldn't think, it's not really graffiti, but
That's 15 minutes on this, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
Big, I guess like more big rolling colorful shapes on the side. There's a very small kind of parallelogram down at Davis Street Park that he'll be working on. Maya's is a mural of a quilt with victims of police brutality, and the quilt has symbols and a code that describe the scenario and the situation. There's a picture of it on our event page for the Juneteenth party that is coming up. That's going to be the unveiling of this. It's a really powerful piece. I really am glad. We spoke after the rally. She had some ideas about what she wanted to do there, and after the rally, she was really inspired and asked if she could kind of change tack, and I encouraged that. I thought that was appropriate for the current atmosphere. So there are pictures in there.
I see it now. Thank you, Steve.
I don't know.
I think I see
my
Patrick.
art descriptions are not so much.
Jen?
I just wanted to add that Patrick's mural is based on interaction with kids from the neighborhood. That is part of the mural will not go up just Patrick doing it. He's actually going to be teaching kids in the neighborhood to do paint. That's what the grant is written for. So it's not Patrick independently doing that. And then just wanted to add about Maya's, just to kind of see into the future. I will be asking for more money from the board or more money from the organization to solidify artist statements. We have not done that yet on any of our murals, but if you read Maya's, it's so powerful that I feel that we really need to consider having each mural have its own statement next to it so that the artist can convey what they were trying to send in their message. And I have started collecting some of that document since the porch mural was installed, but just wanted to say that as you start reading through that, know that that will be a future ask of mine.
Thank you, Jen.
So the vine mural is Patrick's, the one that would go on the oak and vine side next to like rock by rock on the side by.
It's gonna, yeah, it's gonna go on that corner next to the last year's installation.
Thank you.
And then also with Maya's mural, her mural will not be the same size and scale as other murals. When I talked to Maya, we talked about the importance of making sure that people could come and take photos in front of it or be a part of it if they wanted to. So it's going to be a larger scale mural than we normally have on the building. So I just do want to kind of preface that as well. All of our other murals seem to be kind of the same size. Hers will be extended longer with the amount of information that we're going to put in there. And then also we felt it was very important to have, it's going to be about 3 feet off the ground, so that anyone who wants to can come and take photos or be a part of that particular art piece.
And just to add, before Brendan, I think you had a comment, but I just wanted to add also as clarification that going back to what maybe not everybody didn't have a chance to review in that email is that Maya's mural is basically going to be funded by our organization by way of having received the facade grant of $25,000. So it's basically recouped. The cost of that is recouped by that grant. You know, that is money that we have, and it's still, you know, money that's used, but it's definitely appropriate to direct it to, you know, refurbishment and beautification of the facade of our building in any form. And then Alex Ladd's mural that is planned for actually installation at Davis Street Park is basically the same as previously when we fronted the cost of projects that were then later reimbursed by that quick win that quick win money from the city. So we will be, the reason for the pre-audit here is we have to front the money for that project, but we anticipate a full reimbursement. It might take a little while to get that from the city, but that, we've already notified them of that.
Thank you, Sarah.
Just one more thing on Alex's work at Davis Street Park too. He's been taking into consideration that a lot of tagging happens in that area. So part of his goal with his art is going to be to leave spots open for people to come and be able to add their own art or add additional spots, I guess, onto what he's doing there. And I thought that that was kind of cool.
And Brendan, did you have a question?
Yeah, my question, I just didn't see a location for Maya's. And we're just kind of wondering the location, but I just wanted to also say that the art looks really good. So
Maya's mural will be located on the west wall of Jaybird Boutique, maybe 10 feet to the south, 10 feet to the right of the pre-existing vine mural that's up there. They'll be side by side.
So kind of between the map of the neighborhood mural and the birds that are there that Patrick did on the other wall facing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically in the center of those 5 parking spots.
Oh, yep, that's
so if you park in the side entrance on the west side where there are 5 parking spots, her mural will be the centerpiece of that.
Where will the mural go at Davis Street Park?
They're on Grant Street on the by the actual like physical skateboarding infrastructure there. There was a mural that had been there for a number of years of fish, and it's dilapidated and been tagged, and it's just needs to be repainted over. So on the Grant Street side of Davis Street Park, there's a small wedge. It was kind of hard to scan and send Alexander's proposal because it was actually on a larger piece of paper. So I numbered them. If you put number 1 with number 2, you see like a longer isosceles triangle.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Otherwise, we can return to our motion that was on the table. And Jeremy, if you will repeat your motion.
Absolutely. I come from an organization that used to promote musical acts in their infancy, and one of our prime objectives was getting them contact information. So in accordance with Jen's request, not only do I move that we approve both of the art pieces for the values of $2,000 a piece, I also add in that we should not only put in placards for both of the new art pieces, but as many existing art pieces as we can within the confines of the Vine neighborhood's budget, within respects of probably $1,000.
Just if I could ask a clarifying question, maybe Jen, you can speak to that. Does that sound like a appropriate round number for a budget for us to be able to install statement placards for the full slate of art that we have around our building?
If it doesn't, I'll start with Maya's mural and then we'll work our way around.
Thank you. Would there be a second for that motion?
I will second.
Thanks, Brendan. And Maggie, whenever you're ready, we will roll call. Oh, you're on mute.
Maggie, you're muted.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sorry.
Jeremy, I'm just going to read it over quickly. Tell me if any of it is incorrect.
It's right.
Motions to approve both art pieces for $2,000 and additionally add extra $1,000 to fund placards for the artist statements for all of VNA's art installations.
Right on.
All right. Laura, I'm gonna do you first today, since I missed you every other time.
Ready.
Laura Citino.
Aye.
Aaron Bensinger.
Aye.
Eddie DeGraw.
Aye.
Brenda Maloney.
I second and support.
Oh, you seconded. Oh, let me write that down. Sarah Ruggles.
Yes.
Jared Selner.
Support.
I support. Margaret Wilson. Gwendolyn Hooker.
I support.
Aaron Harris.
Aye.
I think I got everybody. If I missed you, speak now.
Did you get Remy?
Oh, Remy, darn it. Remy Harrington, support or not?
Support.
Thank you.
I support. Okay.
Thank you, Remy. Gotcha.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Thank you. And just briefly, I feel badly that feelings have been hurt throughout this, and I'm aspiring to do better as we move forward. I appreciate you honoring these previous commitments and look forward to doing better moving forward.
Thank you, Steve. We are come to agenda item 3D, a variety of the reactions to recent events, including possibly discussion of anti-racist strategies for our organization, mutual aid, community supports. A discussion was had in the executive committee last week about the possibility of issuing a public statement from our organization. Discussion also, I think, has come up about revisiting our mission statement in relation to that as well. So a variety of statements. I'm open to discussing any of these items in any order. I don't think that there's really a need to go in order there. And Jen, do you want to start off?
I think I would personally feel better about working for an organization that would be willing to put out a public statement.
And so I'm gonna not say too much here. I have a few things that I want to say later in the agenda, and I really want to open this time for some discussion on some of these topics. If other members of the EC wanted to prompt with some of the things that came up in our discussion from last week, or if any of you have things to add that are kind of burning on your mind right now.
I just want to make sure that the RFP process does get discussed at some point. I mean, maybe we already talked about that, but it's great that we're moving forward with these awesome murals, but I still feel like we haven't kind of developed a known process to all artists for them to submit work, or, you know, it's an evolution that I really appreciate Steve working through with artists who've approached him, but it is becoming a little more noticed, and so more artists are wanting to participate, and I think it's just safer as an organization to have solidified processes that we can all agree on. That's my only last point.
Absolutely.
I'm excited about the murals that we're working towards. Yes, and just one other burning thing. There's a really great document that Building Blocks is working on that I recommend us looking at, or like reviewed, which is dismantling white supremacy culture in organizations. And it has 14 traits of white supremacy culture in nonprofit organizations. And it's just been really helpful as a lens. I'm part of the Dismantling Racism Task Force for People's Church, the Unitarian Universalist Church. And we've reviewed that, and it's kind of helped us form our, you know, like norms for the group to meet. And essentially we're just really working towards examining how our organization has acted in the past and how we keep perpetuating these traits of white supremacy culture. And it's not necessarily that we all can be defined as white supremacist, but I hope we're all at a point where we can talk about this more openly. But the organization and the foundation of what, you know, the Vine Neighborhood Association or just any nonprofit has like put, you know, taken as a foundation to develop, there's traits that were highlighted by BIPOC community. So that's, you know, just really something that's helped building blocks, and I can send that out to folks if we want to review it, or take a time every session to like go through the 14 traits and work through, just like in our meetings or our subcommittee or something, where we're actually actively doing work to dismantle it within this nonprofit too.
I would love to do. I feel like right now I just have a whole scattershot of ideas where I see that we're not meeting our highest goals in that respect, but I don't know how to do it systematically. So I think that would be a great place to at least start doing the work to see where we need to do better.
It's an approachable document, and it's easy to pick each trait and kind of work through it slowly. And I feel like our board has been developed a nice rapport and is comfortable enough to be able to really dig into some of the harder conversations and topics. And I can just send it out so people can review it. It's just a suggestion for starting to have these deeper conversations to do the deeper work as an organization.
Absolutely. I would definitely love to have that and to encourage everyone to read it, especially white folks, especially white folks who don't feel like they need to read it. Yeah. And I definitely agree that we need to continue having conversations about what the RFP process is going to look like. And one thing that we talked about at the meeting on May 26th, where we discussed equity in the RFP process, as well as equity in all other aspects of the VNA, was that we are going to have to do a lot of homework as an organization before and during and after bringing on an equity consultant and implementing a theory of change. So thank you for bringing that up and kind of reminding us all that we got to individually do work, and then we got to do work as a group, and somebody isn't going to swoop in and fix everything for us. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I would love if Eddie, if you could share that with the just kind of with the thread that we sometimes see after our meetings for shared documents. There is one that I would like to add to that thread as well that I have found to be very comprehensive resource. I think it's called it's called Justice in June. It's kind of like a calendar strategy for individuals to commit to either 10, 25, or 45 minutes a day for a full month. It doesn't really have to be June. We're obviously part of the way through that, but including links to just an extraordinary number of resources and articles, books, and source material to pursue kind of the work of anti-racism and decolonizing our brains as we and sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but I wanted to also lift up and thank and reiterate thanks to Remy for sharing with us that theory of change document and resource that we got a little while ago. I've been kind of bit by bit digging into that, and it was definitely an awesome resource to use as well. I'm feeling like there are just so many of them that a thought that's been on my mind is like, where do we want to direct all of these resources? Do we want to keep directing things to each other as a board and as staff among our organization, or at a certain point, do we start directing resources out into our community as well? And I think that's something that I kind of wanted to hear people's thoughts on, because I have admin credentials on our social media, but I really would like to kind of hear the the rest of our staff and board's thoughts on like to what extent we can use our organization's voice to share resources with our community.
Hi, everybody. It's Gwendolyn again. So I have a couple of quick things to say, and I'm going to get off here. But the first thing that I wanted to just note is that, you know, I think it's imperative that we as a board, I mean, we should have been using this time that we're using now to have constructed a statement from this board and our position regarding the police brutality, the macing and assault of peaceful protesters. So I guess to me, it's good to have an agenda, but sometimes, you know, real life shows up and you have to detour from the agenda and respond to real life crises. And we are in a crisis within a crisis within a crisis. And so it is my expectation that I am on a board that is gonna apply equitable lenses to all of the work that we do. And as a collective board, we should have been released a statement. We should have been stated our position clearly. We know what our position is because we work together, you know, and I'm not suggesting that we are not a good working board that has definitely have some awareness about what's going on and care about what's happening in our communities and nationwide. But we have to, we should state that, and we should state that emphatically. And I feel like we should have probably had an emergency meeting instead of talking about when we're going to have an annual meeting. We should have been talking about what is our statement collectively as this board in response to what's going on in our community, what's going on across this country and across this world. I also want to just say that, you know, reading books and doing those things are good for folks, especially white folks. But, you know, more importantly, you have experts on your board. You have Black women that are experts in racism and structural discrimination and structural racism as it has presented us every day that we have been alive. And so it's a lot less time consuming to just listen to the Black people that are on your board for real-time information as opposed to resorting to a or something like that.
Did good last night.
Thank you. But you know, I guess because we are in a time in history that we've never been in before. I don't want to be an organization that's sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what other organizations are doing for us to know what to do. We need to chart our path and go with our path. And if we do it correctly, other people will be following us. We shouldn't be setting a standard to just sitting around and waiting to see what other neighborhood organizations are doing or what other nonprofits are doing, because everybody's making their own rules right now. So if everybody's going to make their own rules, then I think that we should make some rules that are going to really make an impact and create a statement and then follow those up with actionable items. That's just where I'm at with it. You know, I live on North Street. I live a block away from where they burnt down a whole block of beautiful historical homes in my neighborhood. I live 3 streets over from where they burned and vandalized the Junior Girls building, where they burned and vandalized a building that one of my friends was going to use for affordable housing. So I'm a little pissed off and I don't have time to waste time. And so I need people to be in the same sense of urgency as I am. This is a very bad situation that we're in. I am on a call with the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners that don't feel that it's a crisis. Racism is a crisis, okay? This is the county we live in. They have to think about whether or not we are in a crisis enough to vote on making police brutality as a resolution. So I just urge folks to really start looking at, zoom in a little bit and look at really what is going on in Kalamazoo right now. To have a very clear view of the structural racism that is embedded in the fabric of this country and in Kalamazoo. We are living in a time when people are showing their colors and their biases. And I am not insinuating that every white person is a racist. I do not believe that. But I do believe that every white person has white privilege. And what you do with that white privilege is what's going to set the stage for real change as we move forward. We need allies that are actually going to stand up and use their voice to actually create the change, because me and Remy and people that look like us can say things all day long and nobody's going to listen until a white person says it. And we need white people to start not sitting on the fence, but actually picking a side. And whichever side people pick is fine. I just need people to pick that side and stay on that side, as opposed to riding the fence and trying to see what's going to happen so you can make a decision. I think we need to actually set the stage and be leaders that we are, and not following the trend of what everybody else is doing. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you, Gwendolyn. I definitely hear you. And I want to especially thank you for the implied offer of lending your brilliance and your expertise to the rest of the board, because that is something that I think I've been a little bit reluctant to make extra asks of people who are dealing with a lot of very, very extraordinary circumstances, as you said right now, and very busy lives. And I definitely would love to lean into that expertise in as much as you are willing to offer it.
I want to chime in and say I'm surprised that we didn't talk, or Steve didn't mention, that the Vine Neighborhood Association was used as a medic station during the most recent protests. So I do want to give credit to Steve's idea. He did kind of suggest it, and it was immediately turned into a resource for the protests. And not to say that that's doing enough, but what surprised me is that we didn't talk about it or lift that up in our board meeting here, that we didn't say, hey, we should be proud of this. We should be proud of the fact that we were able to meet that need. We had a very good location that was close to the protests, and we were able to bring in medics from the street medics from the community that were able to get donations, like have a location that donations could be dropped off for medic supplies. Like Steve just let that happen. We didn't get board approval for that. So if that's breaking some rules, I apologize, but sorry, not sorry. It was just, that's the kind of thing that I'm also surprised that we didn't talk about on this meeting. Like, we are a community center, we are like a resource center. And I think that was a great example of it being a resource for this police violence and this movement right now. But that's still not enough. I mean, the fact that we just weren't talking about it is a surprise to me.
I just want to add, that is the first thing on Steve's executive director report that I'm
okay. I didn't get this stuff till later, so
in the agenda.
Cool.
And I agree. There's a lot of stuff that happens day to day, and that has been happening at the Vine. I know that I'm there pretty frequently. Steve's there pretty frequently. Jen's there pretty frequently. For an organization that's not technically open, we have still been delivering services out of there. Okay. And I have from gathering supplies that are being dropped off to making sure that the distro thing is still happening and they have everything that they need. So there's still things that are happening at the Vine, even amidst all of the things that even being closed, people still know that we are a resource, we are a hub, and people will still show up and still reach out regardless of what the sign says on the door. And that's really a testament to Steve's leadership. I mean, he has been a person that people trust, and people will come to, people can call, people will go to his house, whatever it takes to just, get the okay to say, hey, can we have a distro? Can we drop some stuff off from the protest, or whatever it may be? So there's a lot of real-time things that are happening that, you know, the board may not necessarily know. I only know because, you know, I'm there, but there's a lot of things that are still happening. The day-to-day basic needs of people that are still being met, but there is some things that we definitely could do better. And that's what I want to talk about. What are those things that we could be doing better, that we should be doing better? And what is it going to take to get there?
I want to chime in because, of course, I want to say, Gwendolyn, she hit the nail on the head with her statement that all you have to do is believe Black women. She didn't say it quite like that, but that's what she's saying. And I'm not here to translate for her because she was emphatic. She was clear. She was succinct about what she said. But all we have to do is believe the Black women that are on the board. And what that means for me is that even as it relates to what we were discussing in the past agenda item of the RFP process, there's so many different layers of what our experience is as we even engage with this board and having to maneuver and manage right here what Gwendolyn is just saying, which is what we kind of shifted and we pivoted into, which is affirming what has been done, the good intentions, and what has been done, when there is still a comprehensive need and failure of systems, neighborhood associations, and just a very, very complicit nature of how the totality of it functions together. And so when we're talking about this, I don't appreciate the fact that she has now had to pivot to affirm what we have done, because those are things that should be done because we're human beings and we operate in the human service capacity and a public service capacity. So I'm not giving anybody, as much as I love this board, and I tell you guys that all the time, and it's the truth. I'm not saying this to beat up on anybody, but I'm saying that we are beyond the time now to be affirming the normalcy that we're supposed to be having as it relates to what the function is that we said we were going to do in the first place. I'm not giving anybody any kudos for that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, I'm just not doing it. Gwendolyn said what she said in the first place. We should have crafted a statement. We should have crafted a statement about our commitment to be better. We should have crafted a statement about what our goals are for ourselves, how we've looked internally, how we facilitated. We did that before we even knew that we were going to, we knew that there were disparities in terms of how the pandemic affected the Black community. We knew that. We knew that we had entered into an agreement with someone that in a way that made the Black women on the board, so not only Black women, right? We knew that we had entered into a relationship under a contract for a service rendered in a way that didn't feel equitable. We knew that we were doing those types of things already. So if we just looked internally like, yo, on our watch, these types of social violences in Kalamazoo continue to happen. And what can we do? What can we do? What we're going to look internally, if even that was just the statement, which has been the statement of most predominantly white institutions and entities. Like, we are committed to looking internally. And that should not be preempted by, or the impetus of those types of statements should not be because of the Black women on the board having to say it to us. And it's not just about we made a perfunctory statement. It's not about that. It's really like Gwendolyn said, I really want y'all to hear what she said. She gave you some tools. She gave you some gems right there. It's not about reading the books. It's really not. It's the theory of change is important because it's important for you to do the work individually and collectively, and for all of us to do that work together. But there's some things that need to happen. There's some things that need to happen that we can't be the instructional negresses on the board trying to give you all of the different tools that you need. Those are things that you guys have to look at in terms of what does your identity, how does it play, what role does that play within the context of how our systems and how our institutions and how our community functions and operates? Really think through what Gwendolyn said, and I support what Gwendolyn said 100%. She couldn't have said it any better. It's a gift to this board.
Thank you, Remy.
I'm not sure if anybody's following through the chat, but Eddie did offer a building block statement or something perhaps that we could go off of and turn back from I don't know what's on the agenda. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but to look at some of the things that they used as their statement and maybe craft something that as maybe we could use that as an outline to get something crafted and perhaps put out sooner than later.
I'm definitely open to trying to lead a group with some urgency to put together a statement for the organization. And I guess I want to find out from board members whether it would be preferred that there be a initial meeting scheduled to brainstorm and kind of roundtable an outline for the statement prior to any type of attempting to draft statements or alternative statements to propose, or whether, you know, Steve and myself and whoever wanted to participate in the process of crafting that statement would, if it would be preferred to review something that was kind of already assembled and provide critique or editing at that point. Any thoughts on that process?
Sorry, I've been talking a lot. Laura, you go.
I was just gonna say the latter sounds faster. So I feel like urgency and speed is of the essence. And yeah, I mean, I would be more comfortable with speed and energy and emphasis. I think part of what I would just want to say in terms of all of this conversation is that I feel like a lot of those kind of board processes that we have that are, as we've talked about, very rooted in and tied in very white systems of power, slow this stuff down a lot. I feel like we table stuff a lot, we committee stuff a lot. And that to me, I feel like is part of that root change system we want to look at in the future.
Totally. I would like to propose or offer the option that, so I would like to table the rest of the meeting and spend the next half hour hammering out a statement. Because Gwendolyn and Remy are absolutely right. We should have already released something. And I think it's up to us to, you know, if we got to work late on this one, we got to fucking work late on this one. That's on us. So I motion to table 4, 5, and 6 to our next board meeting and spend the next 35 minutes, math, taking the building block statement and using that as a jumping off point for us to begin to draft our own letter. And I am happy to own the typing on that and share my screen so that we can all collaborate.
Because we are at just about the closing time for our meeting, I guess we could extend our meeting time out if people were if we had a quorum opinion about that, and if we could maintain quorum. Otherwise, we also have the option of officially adjourning the meeting, but extending the Zoom conference just to basically conclude with an ad hoc meeting, tail ending our meeting after adjournment.
So I'm a little torn on this because I know that we gotta adhere to Robert's rules to cover our tracks, but I'm kind of at a point with this where like Robert's rules are done for me. Like we gotta start writing this. Like so whichever is the procedurally faster way to get started writing the statement. I'm for.
It sounds a little context about the population.
I think that Gwendolyn and Jen are speaking at the same time. Gwendolyn, do you want to go ahead?
Who's going ahead?
Gwendolyn, do you want to go ahead?
Yep. So I was gonna say, so when we look at the population that makes up the Vine neighborhood, you have at least, I don't want to misquote the numbers, 57% are minority or Black people. 69% are low income people. Like the population that's being beaten and killed and abused and assaulted is the population that you serve. So for there to not be a statement about supporting that population is problematic. So to talk about procedure and to talk about the length of the meeting, I am going to make a motion to adjourn all of the things that are remaining on the agenda and to craft a statement now. That is my motion.
I second.
Before finalizing that motion and taking a roll call, I guess sorry, in reviewing the last pieces of the agenda, Steve, is there any part of your report that is vital and urgent?
No, just please, I'm just excited for the Juneteenth celebration on Friday that was completely organic and driven by residents. So.
And there was actually something that maybe we could do after the extension of this discussion, but I do need to make sure to adhere to my commitment to Maya to solicit for volunteers for that event that's coming up this Friday. Apologize for my dogs freaking out right now. Can't mute myself while I'm talking, but hopefully you can hear me. I do need to take just a minute or two at some point in the remainder of the meeting to announce that and to try to identify a few volunteers for her. And with that, we can return to the motion that's on the table. Is there any other discussion? And if not, we can take
oh, I'm sorry.
We can take a vote maybe for the sake of expediency. We can really just pretty easily take a vote by asking if there are any opposed to the motion that's on the table.
If you're opposed to this, audibly state nay. Any abstentions? Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, so hold on, just reorganizing my life here, making sure I can still see all of you. I don't know if I need to ask permission for this, but may I facilitate this next session?
I was actually going to humbly ask that you be willing to do that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Just to start us off, it looks like you took the building block statement. I already took it and kind of started us off so we can move forward.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
I put it in the comments. It's just simple enough. Building blocks totally supports using whatever Katie wrote, just giving Katie credit for the whatever.
Of course.
Giving
so
Katie credit right now, that's all.
I have lost my ability to see the chat because I am sharing my screen. I
can email it to you.
That would be awesome. Or I can kind of I can unshare and then grab it. All right, cool. Eddie, I will just copy paste here what you have written. I got it. No need to email it. All right.
I have a question, Eddie. I'm a little confused about it says here, like, before we go further on this call, like, what was the context of this where was the statement shared? Was it in the meeting or something?
Katie is the executive director and she shared it with a Zoom call. We're doing a summer training series for community organizing leadership, and she wanted to make sure that we said it before we started our series. It was right as everything was happening. And so,
oh, okay, gotcha. I was just curious about that.
yeah,
what that sentence
I just
was.
copied it really quick just to keep our conversation going.
Sounds great.
But
all right. So I'm going to go ahead and read what we have. And I am going to just open it up. Feel free to just speak up if there is anything that you think should be added. If you have any thoughts about what does or doesn't need to be covered in here. And if more than one person speaks at once, I will do my best to moderate that.
so if you take out that first paragraph, I've already rewritten this. If you read the second paragraph, it's already
It's just
pretty
the
much
first. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to editing mode. All right, the Vine Neighborhood Association Board of Directors agrees that it is crucial to take a moment to give space to what you may be feeling in the aftermath of the brutal murder of George Floyd by a police officer. We can't talk about enhancing neighborhood life without speaking to the systems of power that fuse the oppression, disempowerment, and the murder of people of color. The VNA strives to be an anti-racist organization that believes Black Lives Matter. We have work to do. We will strive to ensure our work is crafted and reflected on through an equity lens. We will not tolerate anything but anti-racist initiatives.
So could we elaborate where we're seeing I guess could we put in things that happened that were more local
Yes.
after we talked about George Floyd, just to really set a context of, you know, why it's important for us to, you know, why we're more compelled to make a statement is because not only did that happen and you know, to our brother, but we have things that are happening, you know, right here in Kalamazoo. I mean, when people can't peacefully protest without getting, you know, tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets, that's problematic.
Absolutely. So what I'm doing right now is I'm copy pasting a list from the What Can I Do in Kalamazoo document that has just kind of a catch up on all the stuff that has happened. Let me just break all these links here and tighten it up so we can have kind of a comprehensive list of things that have happened in our community that we're responding to.
Is it possible to keep that link to that document so we can, because I think our statement's going to be challenging to have every single event, but what I'm hearing you say is it, and also I'm being problematic with being facilitated. Let me know if I'm
That's fine. No, I am so over, like, just say what you gotta say.
So, because I think that document has most thorough, up-to-date information, and if we send this statement out digitally, it'd be nice for people to have an ability to look through things in more detail.
Oh, okay. So you want me to leave the links in?
Well, leave the link to the document in, if that's just a suggestion.
I'm happy to do that.
Kind of like in a news article when you read and it has something that you can click on for more information.
Yeah, let me actually just undo everything I just did. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and leave all those documents in. These all link out to Facebook protests, news articles, etc.
So could we, I guess maybe my thing would be maybe put the, I don't know, at some point, we definitely want to highlight, you know, the choking of Cornelius, the peaceful protest, which simultaneously was happening while houses on the north side were being burnt down. All the way up until last night when Kalamazoo Junior Girls building was vandalized. So I think, I don't know if it's easier to embed the links right into the document or if it's easier to put the links maybe at the bottom, but
totally.
I do think it's important for them for the links to be there so people can actually click on them.
Sure. Yes, so So I'm going to say that the Vine Neighborhood Association Board of Directors agrees that it is crucial to acknowledge
the recent events that have led up to this statement today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of nitpicking, but
Led up to the events of our collective statement, or however you want to word it, but something.
it's kind of nitpicking, but does switching out the word agrees for like a belief or believes?
Love it.
Makes sense.
Love it.
I am a professional copywriter. I love nitpicking. It's what I get paid to do. The Vine Neighborhood Association Board of Directors believes that it is crucial to acknowledge the recent violent events that have led up to our need to release a statement. Colon. So we have Cornelius Frederick, the KDPS violence against protesters. I'm going to just kind of edit some of this text to keep it topical for what we're talking about. If I delete anything that you're like, that should have stayed, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
On Tuesday, June 2nd.
I don't think they were rubber bullets. I think they were
pepper balls. You are right. Carrie Ann Thomas was kind enough to let me know that last night.
Right.
Isn't that sweet of her?
That's better.
I treated someone with rubber bullet wounds, though. That's very weird.
That's what people are saying.
No, I wonder, I feel like there's some slippage between what KDPS says, just because they brought in outside agencies. And in my opinion, if you're bringing out outside agencies, you're responsible for everything they do. So maybe that the distinction we're running up against is that KDPS itself was not, but state police were there, and maybe state police were doing it, and KDPS is not, like they're slipping in that hole where they don't have to own that. Could that be what it was?
Either way, it could be stated as non-lethal rounds or something like that.
No, I don't think we kind of call them non-lethal, because they're technically lethal if incorrectly used or used not in the way intended.
Right. I don't know. That's what the cops call it. That's what.
If I could ask that we add in after tear gas, that we add in pepper spray, because pepper spray actually statistically is more lethal than tear gas in some instances.
And I would love to be able, as long as this isn't too, well, this is maybe a point for a different spot, but I don't want to lose the fact that this is happening in the backdrop of the pandemic, and the police actions in this have the reality of exacerbating that pandemic through their use of tear gas, particularly for knowing that this is been particularly impactful on communities of color.
Heard that.
You know, you're doing a Black Lives Matter protest and they show up and they can't even wear a mask, and then they shoot you with tear gas, which causes you to become more sick and to be more infective.
Agreed.
Do we want to make reference to the event on the Saturday prior where riot police showed up apropos of nothing in the peaceful protests on that Saturday afternoon?
Oh yeah, yep.
So that was Saturday, May 30th.
Yeah, let me see if I can find a link.
Were they KDPS officers?
I believe so. They were, yeah, I think there was 6 or 8 police officers in riot gear. The story that was fed out by the sergeant or the police chief was that they had a vehicle stuck in the crowd and needed to remove it.
They had a vehicle stuck in the crowd because they placed their vehicle right in the pathway of the protests. So we had no choice but to run directly into them.
Should we add any additional language about agitation or intimidation into that line, or is what we have sufficient? I feel okay about that.
They did enter the crowd and they were forceful with the people that were in the crowd. They were physically pushing people back into the crowd. There was a lot of aggression in that interaction. They didn't just show up.
Yeah, I would say that the thing that's noteworthy is, to me and my experience doing activism in this town, is that the escalation was like unheard of for Kalamazoo to go from never seeing anyone in riot gear to the National Guard being called in is just what scares me the most about it all too. Not only the harm that was caused, but I don't know if y'all have been hearing nationwide, but the National Guard are shooting people or have shot people with live rounds and have killed people. So when the National Guard was brought in, that set off an alarm in my head too. So I know that we're saying that if we could just emphasize the escalation of violence, just their tactics with the riot gear, and then just how fast everything went. That's the one thing that was very noteworthy to me.
I also think that's what is noteworthy is on the Saturday the 30th event, the following statement by the police department or the public safety department was not an apology. They have yet to apologize for that. They have yet to apologize for their actions on June 2nd.
Yeah, I was going to add that during the press conference on I believe it was Tuesday, June 2nd, during the press conference on that day, as well as during the city commission meeting last night, the chief of police and other KDPS officers have basically provided really nothing but apologetics and excuses for their behaviors, justifying all of their choices, their actions, and never admitting that any mistakes were made. And there was a weak apology that was phrased as something like, we apologize if we scared people.
Totally.
I think that was the apology that was uttered.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I think we've spent enough time on rehashing the events that led up to us releasing a statement. Let's write the statement.
Hey, Eric, I was looking at what you were writing, and I see that you were talking about disproportionately affected Black communities and communities of color. I think that would be a great area to put in what Gwendolyn was talking about on our community is predominantly affected by some of these issues. So I think bringing it back to the Vine and what our community is, and that people that in our community, the neighborhood, and as a city, bringing it back to that area. Just thought.
Sorry, my call dropped and my phone died.
Happens. Remy, where did you drop out at? What was the last thing you heard?
I don't even recall. I think Sarah was speaking, and so cool. I wanna just jump back in without disrupting what you guys have already done, and I'll just pop in.
Cool. Sounds good. The Vine neighborhood as a racially, okay, so serves. Disproportionate, oh God, I'm losing steam here, y'all. All right. How do we feel about this?
Oh, good. Good. I think we need to acknowledge that that we have a lot of work to do as an organization, and that we need to do better. Not just that we're doing great, but we need to do better.
Also, one thing, I don't know if this was mentioned in my absence, and again, I'm sorry that the call dropped. I was my phone died. But is there any opportunity for us to look at this, the framing of the context? And I wasn't able to kind of really, I said what I meant, but what role does a neighborhood association play within the context of city government? What type of contingencies can be placed upon our city government as it relates to the role that they play and how we can stand in solidarity with Black communities and our Black constituency in a way that can compensate for some of the brokenness that the existing infrastructure has delivered to us? And so when we think about the framing of this statement, and that's what I think I missed in what I said, in terms of us believing Black women, the fact that we entered into the concept of a theory of change based on what our current RFP process was, we entered into that space. What Gwendolyn is talking about and what resonates so deeply with me about her approach is, I just love that. Just believe us. You have these people that are on your board that are holding space in this way. And so there's that, but also believe yourselves. Believe yourselves as it relates to, like, how can you leverage your positioning as a predominantly white board to divest from, to hold accountable to? Believe yourself. Think about what role that you play and what role that we play within the context of our representation and our capacity as representatives of this neighborhood to stand in solidarity with the North Side, to stand in solidarity with Edison, to stand in solidarity with the people that, we serve that live here. What does that even look like? What does that look like? What can you do to divest from whatever privileges, I hate that word, but whatever privileges you have access to? What are you willing to sacrifice or relinquish to stand in solidarity with the people that are experiencing the social violences that Black people experience every day? That's what I want to hear in a statement.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, Aaron, I would add where you have city government, I would also add county.
Oh, was that already discussed, what I just said, Zini?
No.
It wasn't.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Can you see the screen, Remy?
No.
What'd you say, Eddie?
Are you on the phone? Okay. Do you want us to read? There's like a small section that maybe, Aaron, you could review what you wrote with, like, strives to be an anti-racist organization, historically white organization. I think that you've been writing that, and I think that kind of speaks to what Remy's saying, but we could add in that section more to what Remy's saying. So
yes. So what I have currently written, after the list of events that have happened in Kalamazoo over the past month or so, and a reiteration that the COVID-19 pandemic disproportionately affects Black communities. The Divine Neighborhood Association serves a racially diverse neighborhood in Kalamazoo, and many of our neighbors and those who we serve have been disproportionately harmed by both the pandemic and the instances of police violence in our community. Our mission is to improve and enhance the lives of the people in our neighborhood. We can't talk about enhancing neighborhood life without speaking to the systems of power that fuse the oppression, disempowerment, and the murder of people of color. The VNA strives to be an anti-racist organization that believes Black Lives Matter. As a historically white organization which has had predominantly white boards and employs a predominantly white staff, we acknowledge that we have internal work to do. We will strive to ensure our work and our service is equitable, contributes to justice, and actively dismantles white supremacy culture. We will not tolerate anything but anti-racist initiatives, both internally and in our larger city and county government.
Yeah.
I think that, that's a mouthful. And I guess I like it. I can't say enough that I like it. I just would, as we put this out in the atmosphere, we have to have the teeth to actually back up what this letter says. So we have to then follow up with what are the action items that we are going to do to make this a fact.
Yes.
That part. Yep.
What I wanted to ask is if after the end of that statement of we will not tolerate anything but anti-racist initiatives in our city and county government, that we elaborate on that a little bit and that we basically put out a call to the city and county government making a few very specific actionable demands. We call on the city of Kalamazoo, county of Kalamazoo to ABC.
Okay. So there's ordinances that Patrice Griffin put forward about fair, like equity in housing. Those are like, those are the types of things you can stand behind. There are, you know,
initiative that they're talking about at the county right now, making racism a public health crisis.
Right, that part.
Making a Stephanie Moore introduced, and actually they are in the process of passing that, making racism a public health crisis, as well as making a proclamation and a resolution against police brutality. So you could definitely, you know, stand in solidarity with those two resolutions that are just actually they're on the floor right now being talked about, and they're voting on them individually.
Is it possible
and then,
sorry.
No, go ahead, Eddie. I'm sorry, babe.
I really like the idea of showing very strategic solidarity with the folks that are already doing this work too. And having a link to these statements. So Aaron's typing out these statements. If it's possible to link to any campaigns or what Gwendolyn just said, so people can get more information on them. Like, yeah, Pact Boards is doing that. That's just a suggestion.
The housing equity ordinance.
Yeah.
That's Patrice Griffin's ordinance.
It is.
Yeah.
So there's a declaration for racism being a public health crisis. You're doing great, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
No problem.
One thing I could suggest would be to call upon the city and county officials to take a public stance against the use of escalation tactics by police officers, such as chemical weapons, non-lethal rounds, or whatever we want to call those. Along with at the same time, along with the outsized use of lethal force against communities of color.
That's right. Yep.
I am listening and I am catching up.
Please add hope to navigation.
Yes.
I wrote that down. You can repeat part of it if you.
And then the urgency component of it, which is what I really appreciated last night about, you know, in the city commission meeting, that was prioritized. You know, our city manager kind of came up under fire, and I think that he was very unclear with what Eric Cunningham brought to the table about, you know, I'm unclear what you're asking me to do right now. You know, some of this, a lot of the things that we're talking about, like, you know, they're not tactile things outside of the fact that we're prioritizing. If we don't have the right people for the job, we're just not hiring. If we can't get it right, we're not going to just be prompted to act in the default of white supremacy. We're going to wait. So I think that creating space in our statement, which is even through the Zoo City Farm and Food Network, one of the people that are representatives of MSU Extension outlined that we didn't have a word to call this thing, right? She calls it patient transformative labor. Patient transformative labor, because the normalcy of white supremacy is so deeply embedded within the context of how we function that we need space to be able to deconstruct dialectically, like, where is our oppression, our internalized white supremacy showing up? Where is our internalized racial oppression showing up? And how can we deconstruct that as a community? Because it's so deeply embedded in our pathology. So we need to have time for that. And there's also the juxtaposition of the urgency of us stopping and halting all of the oppressive and volatile things that we're doing against communities of color. And I'm not here to pretend like that's going to be easy, but we need to immediately stop and halt whatever we're doing that's volatile and that those things that can and cannot be named, and create space for the patient transformative labor to happen. To understand that we do need time as a community to heal. We do need time as a community to identify where are those things showing up and how we need to dismantle those things within our current pathology. And so I think that those things need to be, I'm kind of just talking right now, but if you guys have thoughts on what I'm saying or like a very visceral response to that, I'd like to, can we kind of talk as friends and family and neighbors in this way about what I just said, please?
Yes, I have written, we as a board commit to acting with urgency and also taking the much needed time and introspection to deconstruct our own internalized white supremacy. I also think that I'm gonna bring this document up at every successive VNA meeting to make sure that we are, and like hold us accountable to naming what things we did over the past month that did that.
Good. Zuni, how do you feel about that? Does this feel like we're moving too fast? Gwendolyn, how do you feel about what has been said?
Well, I think the letter is I think the statement I think it's a good statement. I just hope, I think the next steps from the letter, and I think it's important that we all agree on the letter and get the letter, send the letter out. But I also, my next thing is, what are the action items that we're gonna do in support of the letter that we have now said that we are, in support of the statement that we have made? Because historically what happens is, people, everybody's making these statements. We stand in support of Black Lives Matter, but their practices don't support their statements.
Yeah.
Starbucks is endorsing and giving Trump money, but you can't stand with Black people and give Trump money at the same time. That's not a real thing. So my thing is, what are the next things that we as a board are gonna do? Are we gonna take training? Well, not we, but y'all. I don't need the training. But what as a board are going to be the action items to actually know? Because, even in our policies that do or don't exist are, entrenched in structural racism. I mean, they're just structurally racist on their face. That's just the facts. I mean, it's been like that from the beginning. It's not because of the board that we have or the board maybe 5 years before, but when they were designed, that's what they are. And so we have to figure out in what intersections, as it comes to our mission, are we going to do things that are equitable and that we are dismantling the premise that we are not an organization that is acting under a supremacist type mythology. Even when it comes to
I've been thinking about
the way that we're designing things. Like, we have to do things differently. That's just the bottom line. The way things have been done are not equitable, not even outside of other things. It just has to be different. And it's a lot of work. It's gonna be work. Even our mission, we started working on changing our mission, and I thought that we came up with some really good ideas of ways to change it, but then we have to actually practice what our mission said. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Can we call on specific training, like erase, like I signed up for the July training, or like
Well,
anything specifically that we're committed to?
One thing I wanted to suggest, because I know that the erase like trainings that are open for public registration are filling up in like 5 minutes.
Oh,
and,
totally.
They do, however, the organization does a variety of different types of trainings, individual to organizations. And I don't know if, you know, they would have a one of their facilitators available for us, but I can definitely find out if they would have a facilitator available to provide what I would think of as a type of anti-racism retreat training for people. It would be probably the way most of their events go, a minimum of a day, if not longer of a commitment. And definitely something that I can find out what options are available.
But why is erase our choice? Why is erase our choice?
So we have
that was gonna say that.
We have go ahead.
I'm not feeling that as the option. I'm not feeling no groups that have currently existed right now that have not held white people accountable to the training, the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of training that they do. I need to see how they are holding these institutions and entities that they train for this monetary value accountable to what they're. If that has not occurred, I'm not feeling that. I'm sorry that I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm not. This is a new day. This is a new day. Like, I don't stand with that. I'm sorry. I do not.
Specifically erase, Remy, specifically erase.
Specifically, or I think we need to look through what our options are.
So like Truth and Titus Collective.
I think so too. I think that
we should have the training.
Cool. I think that we should continue these conversations in our effort toward in our like equity, you know, pursuing an equity consultant and pursuing equitable solutions task force that we've talked about that has not yet got off the ground. Because I think there's a lot to say about that. I think that it is a conversation that needs to happen urgently, but that probably won't come to a solution tonight.
Right.
Is how I feel.
Can I don't have the resume, or I mean, I've respectability politics, you know, we always need to have these resumes, and like what Remy's saying with like these paid facilitators. I've led a workshop with a white environmental group that I worked with on just, you know, working through the 14 traits that I mentioned earlier. And it was a really raw and authentic conversation with the white people in our organization. You know, I'm happy to submit a resume if someone needs that, but I'm trying to push through this like respectability politics shit show that we always end up in with the nonprofit world. I totally agree with Remy. I've gone to every single erase thing and everything in this town that they've tried to like work us through. I'd like to offer, just with the white board members, just having a separate Zoom call where we can just start looking through the document. My fear of us trying to find an expert to teach us this is that we won't do anything. And I think we can start somewhere with this one document I found very helpful. If it helps, it's been presented to me through folks that have worked through 20 years of this type of dismantling racism training, but I think we have the capacity to start these conversations as a board on our own and just start using it as a platform as a jumping off point. It's not reading a book, it's actually talking point by point how our organization perpetuates white supremacy culture. And I think it's an easy enough thing to start with. So I'm trying to reflect that I'm hearing about the books and like how frustrated I'm hearing Gwendolyn and Remy are about, we just need to start doing the work. And I want to point out that waiting for the experts to do it is also like perpetuating this like perfectionism or white supremacy culture. It's literally one of the traits that we would talk about in it. So
you could go through. I'm telling you, you could use Jenny Dozema. You could use a white person. You could use somebody that you know. We don't have to go through this profession. People who have professionalized deconstructing I don't know how I feel about that. I don't, it just does not, like, let's build community. Let's build community. Let's have a real conversation. Like what you're saying, Eddie, thank you for that. That's the way I want to show up. Let's get, like, even with, you know, I'm not going to allow this to polarize my relationships that I have, or to participate in the people that are politicizing this conversation. The conversation inherently is political, period. We not going, my body, this Black body, this melanin has been politicized. That's a fact. So when we're having a real conversation, should we heal and arrive at a new space in like for us to heal and move forward? Like, thank you, Eddie. Bring in Jenny, somebody else, somebody y'all feel comfortable with, talk through it, be real with yourselves, and let's get some actionable things moving forward so that we can not have to be in a community where the social violences that are perpetuated against Black people are 4 times the national average in a community this size. And it's 13% of us in the entire population, and over 75% of us live in poverty. Let's try to do a little reflection about how we show up in the names that we put our names on and participate in these entities that we represent. And then let's think through that. Let's think about our sphere of influence. You know, we sent some emails. Gwendolyn and I have shared. I'm actually I'm tapped out at this point, but I don't, you know, we do want actionable things to happen. And there are some things that white people are going to have to come to grips with about what that needs to look like. You know, if this were flipped, if your kids were not able to successfully matriculate through public schools at the levels that our kids were not, if your kids were dying in the ways that our kids were dying, if your parents were dying in these health systems the way that our parents are, if you were experiencing ACEs and early death the way that we are, what will white people do? Like Bill Maher said, he wants white people to get mad like Black people got during the civil rights era. He wants, and I'm not inciting violence here, God knows I'm not, but he said, I want garbage cans through Starbucks windows. Like, get mad like that with us. You know, I'm not trying to incite violence here. Absolutely not. And I'm saying, like, put the shoe on your foot. Like, if this were you guys, how would things be going down?
Yep.
Get actionable in that way. Get actionable like that.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you, Remy. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will be in touch within the week about scheduling a white caucus, a white VNA member caucus, similarly to the way that we organized the equity meeting. I have added a line to this letter that says, we as a board will remain accountable to the community we serve by updating you on our progress toward these goals. Because I think that's something we should do. And I think that's going to be one way that we manage to hold ourselves accountable. As far as a statement, I feel pretty good about what is written here. I have shared it in the chat. You can tell I'm getting into wrap up mode because I have other pressing obligations this evening. Although this is really, really important and I'm glad that we're taking the time to work through it. Are there any outstanding objections about this statement before I push it to Sarah and Steve to release it on our social media?
I just take a moment to turn to Jen and Steve quickly, just to ask if it would be preferred by them that we eliminate the board wording on the statement and just have it read as the Vine Neighborhood Association, which would include the board and the staff as well.
I would be comfortable with that. Yeah.
Vine Neighborhood Association and its board of directors. That good?
Yeah.
All right, Brendan, I think you also had something to say.
Yeah, my one thing is just Vine. I don't really, the wording around the VNA strives to be an anti-racist organization. I feel like it's just kind of soft.
Sure. And it's not really true.
Yeah, and I was thinking, you know, the VNA will do everything in its power to be an anti-racist organization and believes Black Lives Matter. Is a little bit more of a stronger statement versus.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, so the VNA will do anything in its power to be an anti-racist organization and
maybe to
believes
become
that
a more anti-racist organization, since there is really almost no such thing as an anti-racist organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to put some teeth behind it versus just saying we'll strive to do something or we'll think about doing, you know. That was just my thoughts, but.
Oh, I like that, Aaron.
The VNA is committed to becoming a more actively anti-racist organization that believes Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, and we believe Black Lives Matter.
Thank you. Yeah.
And just one last comment before we kind of wrap this up. I'm not an expert, so I don't really know, but you know, I've really enjoyed kind of the Black thoughts that we've had on this community from kind of our Black members of our group. And I don't know if there is the precedent of separating out, you know, certain members of our board from different trainings, but you know, I would think that a more encompassing meeting where we can hear from everyone and perspectives from everyone versus just having one group would be more beneficial, but that's just my thought.
I hear that. I think that it's also important as white folks for us to collect ourselves together in a space where we can be really open and honest with each other without the possibility of harming our Black board members with our ignorance. I think that's important too.
To answer your question, Brandon, there is a precedence of having like white caucuses.
Yeah.
That's what a race has done. When you complete their course, you're invited to their white caucus, which has been a helpful, you know, space to be able to share and to echo what Aaron said, to kind of fumble through our learning without causing harm to the best of our ability is what I've experienced. So it's not to be to be only, sorry, the train's gonna go by. I think it's a best practice to try, from what I've experienced with anti-racist work. But here, do Gwen and you know, does Gwen and Remy feel excluded, or do they like that idea? Maybe we should just be more open about talking about it.
Totally.
I'm fine with that. I want white people to do their own work. I don't have no problem with y'all convening. Y'all have a private transcript anyway, so like get real about what that means in the context of this conversation. You know, there's private white conversations that happen all the time that we're not privy to. So I'm not mad at that continuing within the context of framing it. You know, and centering the thematics of Black Lives Mattering and what that needs to look like and what we're divesting from and sacrificing to create space for all of our community to be able to experience and have a high quality of life, like the majority, you know, group does. Like I'm perfectly fine with that. Gwendolyn, how do you feel?
I'm kind of torn a little bit. I guess, well, first of all, you know, I don't feel like I need anti-racist training. But I do think that at some point we should all, you know, reconvene and start meshing out, okay, what was learned, you know, and how that really looks in real time. And then the whole other part is, where are you learning this from? You know, I mean, you have to have a person or an entity that is versed enough to convey, you know, and recognize the practices that are, you know, structurally inequitable. And even the implicit biases that white people just intrinsically have. And so I was trying to say that, you know, the TRHT team has a lot of circles, healing circles. They don't charge for them. That they offer to organizations and people to talk about implicit biases and to really start getting at some of the roots of how this stuff even began, and then start peeling the layers off like that, as opposed to just, you know, obviously there's some policies that we should change, but it's really about each individual's implicit biases that really govern the way that they react in certain situations, because their experiences are different than our experiences, you know, and their experiences were taught to them by other people, and those people were taught by the slave owners. And so at some point that's going to be handed down in some way. So I'm kind of the jury is out.
Let me get clear on that statement, Gwendolyn, and I know we're all ready to move on for the evening. Let me just understand what you're saying. Am I hearing you say that the group, like you're trying to understand the, like, if white people have internalized racial oppression or superiority, then how are they going to work amongst themselves to be able to identify where it's showing up, that they need an outside perspective to be able to deconstruct it in a way that has the tactile implications in the systems that we're talking about? Okay, now, for me, I don't necessarily disagree with that, and I still feel like there have been things that have happened just in terms of my own outside organizing efforts with the projects that I'm doing, where it has been made very clear to me that white people know what to do. I believe that. I believe that white people know how to divest from systems of power. I believe that white people know how to divest from systems of power. And I think that that's going to require them to be holding themselves accountable to what that looks like. After they have heard what we have said, after we have created, after we have we're coming out of a waning global pandemic where Black people have disproportionately been affected by that in terms of the healthcare outcomes and as it relates to the economic implications of this pandemic. That has been, we watched again, a Black man be murdered. We're a teenager, a child, a kid, videotaped and begged for police officers to please do something. Stop that. Murdered this man, which catapulted us into a protest era on videotape. We saw that happen. This adult male cried out for his life, for his mom, okay? We know that. We saw that again happen. So now we're in a protest era, an unprecedented global protest era. White people are divesting from systems of power. White people are demanding that entire public service departments are being defunded. I don't need to be in the conversation where white people are holding themselves accountable to that or trying to look through again the work. I don't necessarily feel like I need to participate in that. I don't feel that way. And I know that what you're talking about as it relates to that to me feels like a very different and specific thing that needs to happen, which is, again, the integration of Black-led initiatives, where we have, just by virtue of how our diaspora experience as Black people, we have a context and a frame of collectivity in the way that we engage and interact and interface with systems and one another that white people can learn something from. And those ways that we do things, the ways that we have been able, in spite of the social violences that have been that we have been targeted, we've been targeted with these social violences. The fact that we've still been able to sustain that, the way that we've done that needs to be illuminated in the design space. The way that we've been able to sustain and do those things and run our systems and structures and still be able to sustain needs to be recognized as sustainable, genius, integrated within the context of systems that exist, right? That's the way I want to show up. when I think about action, I need people moving over so that those Black-led initiatives can come on in so that everybody can get served and everybody can eat finally. Because that's what we do as Black people. That's what you do through a Black-led initiative. Because not because I'm trying to, again, be polarizing, but just by virtue of what Blackness means the presence of all color. So if you focus in a targeted universalist way and focus in on serving Black women and their children, that means everybody gonna eat. Because guess what the face of poverty is? Black women and our children. So if we create systems that are focused in and targeting Black women and their children, then that means everybody is going to be able to have access to those things because everybody else is being served, right? So if we look at things from that perspective and we move over, divest from our systems of power and create space for Black-led initiatives to come in, do the work internally about where we need to divest and move over so that other ways of doing things can come in. And it's not just Black people. I'm talking about Black people right now. But other communities have demonstrated to us that's what they do. That's what any other community that has been disenfranchised or has chosen to self-segregate, that's what they do. So we just have to stop prioritizing systems that do not serve all of us. Not only do they not serve all of us, but they criminalize, they vilify, they kill people that look like me. That's what I'm talking about. Does that, is the distinction made here? I don't know.
Yep. Absolutely heard. Absolutely heard. And we will have this, I don't know where that sentence was going. I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing that with us. I will hold the very least the white board members accountable to reflecting on what you, Remy, and Gwendolyn have shared with us tonight. Because like you said, that is a gift. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I took notes on what you just said, Remy, just so we can have a springboard to start these conversations too. I mean, we don't need, I remember one of the first board meetings you came to, you said this doesn't need to fall on your shoulders and we need to step up and do the work. And that resonates in my head all the time. And I really want to hold that up and let you know that at least I'm hearing you and I want you to feel heard.
Absolutely. We
Thank you.
have a hell of a lot of work to do. We have a hell of a lot of work to do. And to bring it back to the statement is like not even the tip of the iceberg. This statement is like acknowledging that we see a tip of an iceberg on the horizon. So, yep.
I want to lift up a word that came up a lot in what was just said, which is the word divest, and also kind of reinvest as a counter point to that. But I would like for in our next coming together and possibly as a part of the subsequent interim meetings that take place on this topic to discuss the possibility among our board and staff of reallocating some of our funds that are held in our endowment in the Kalamazoo Community Foundation to provide some more useful redirection, reinvestment of those funds into the community that we serve in, what has been recognized over and over again as a once in 100 years moment in our lives when people are desperately suffering from a lot of different causes right now.
Yes, I think that is absolutely a necessity for us.
You're scheduling it, Aaron. Are you scheduling the White Caucus? Is that correct?
Correct. I will schedule a White Caucus and then a follow-up discussion outside of board meeting hours. If there are other discussions that need to happen, and I think there are, I would encourage other white folks on the board to step up and own putting that together. because those 2 meetings are about all that I have the capacity for at this time. I'll be real.
I just want to re-acknowledge my gratitude to Gwendolyn and Remy for taking the time and giving us the space. I know it's difficult right now, and I just really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate this board so much. I appreciate the willingness of this board, and I appreciate the humility of this board, and I'm grateful and I'm proud to be a part of it and to work through this. These are inherited issues, and I just want to acknowledge that as well. None of us created this. We're inheriting it, and it's time that we dismantle it. So I'm just grateful that we're doing this work together. So thank you.
I agree. Thank you. I really do need to get going. I am going to resend the link to the statement. I would encourage, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to email it out. If you have any additional thoughts or anything about it, would love an email about that by the end of tonight. I can get to it tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow morning we can send it out. Does that feel appropriate, or do we want to just go for it?
I've been rereading it, and it seems, and I've also watched what you're doing, so I think that it looks pretty amazing.
Gwendolyn says go for it.
I'm a go.
I think we should go for it.
All right, if there's no objections, then Sarah, you want to go ahead and share that to the Facebook page?
Tonight?
Right now, 2 hours ago.
I won't be able to share the Facebook
I let my
page.
dogs out. I can come back to that tonight.
Excellent. Sounds good.
Can I just suggest before the White Caucus, maybe, I just really like this document that I sent out. It's from Surge, so Showing Up for Racial Justice. It's a legitimate organization. They've done a lot of work. It's just, I sent it out to the email that was sent out for the June call. If we could just review that before our White Caucus, I would love to use that as a springboard to just start off conversation. If we never use it again, that's fine, but it's something that I've found in the work that I'm doing at other organizations that's been one of the most helpful tools to use. It's not just a book, it's not just a reading group, it's definitely something you can work through.
Yeah, Surge is really awesome.
Thank you.
Agreed. Want to call that homework before we
I wrote it on
before
my
we convene as a White Caucus? Okay. So I'm sending out the statement via email.
I will also email everybody about the volunteer opportunities for the Juneteenth celebration on Friday.
Sent. All right, that'd be awesome. I am going to go ahead and head out. Thank you all so much. Gwendolyn especially, and also Remy especially for sharing, but Gwendolyn especially for lighting a fire and reminding us when we should not have needed to be reminded that crafting a statement and creating some action items for ourselves needed to be the priority tonight. So thank you for that. Oh, I think she left already. That's cool. All right.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
I am going to head out as well. Everyone have a lovely night. Take care of yourselves. Drink water.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks, Vine team.